Welcome to Joe's Happy Hour, a show about markets and life hosted by Joe Fahmy. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be regarded as personalized investment advice or relied upon for any investment decisions. Joe Fahmy is an employee of Zor Capital, and he and his clients may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. All opinions expressed by Joe are solely his own and do not reflect the opinions of Zor Capital. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Eleanor Terrett. Thank you.
Joe Fahmy.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here in Vegas with you.
I know. This is a pleasure. Talking crypto and all things. Quick introduction. You are a journalist and host for Crypto in America.
Yes.
Formerly producer on Fox Business, which we'll get into that and some of your background. I like to let the guests introduce themselves, tell my audience a little bit about themselves. So go right ahead.
Cool. So as you correctly stated, I am a journalist and current co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. And that is a podcast we launched back in March when I left Fox Business. And it focuses solely on crypto policy and interviewing founders who are coming back to the United States after facing 4 years of regulatory backlash from the SEC, from the Biden administration. A lot of crypto companies felt like they had to go to other jurisdictions because of the unfriendly regulatory climate. So with Crypto in America, we're interviewing them now with these changing headwinds, right, or becoming tailwinds, regulatory tailwinds under the Trump administration. A lot of them are coming back. A lot of them are hiring again in the United States. So we interview founders, we interview lawmakers who are actually creating laws for cryptocurrency. That's something that the industry has been asking for a long time, just rules of the road, right? We don't, good actors just want rules that we can follow, right? That we can just, exist and not get sued. So that's been a big ask for a lot of these founders. And then also, the White House, the administration has totally embraced crypto, as I'm sure you've seen, maybe a little more than the President of the United States should. But we'll get into that as well. And also the regulators. So our first guest on Crypto in America was Hester Peirce, the SEC commissioner. She now leads the SEC Crypto Task Force, and she's been an advocate of the space for quite some time, even when she was in the minority under the Gensler SEC. So that's Crypto in America. It's been a lot of fun. We've done 12 episodes so far, and we launched in March. And I have a newsletter that goes along with it. So 3 times a week I'm writing, I'm doing my scoops. It's been a really fun couple of weeks. It's gone fast. I was at Fox for 9 years, nearly 9 years.
Okay.
And
let's talk a little bit about that. From getting into just more of the career path, getting into Fox as, from journalism to producing to eventually transitioning over to the crypto world. I'm curious about that path for maybe people who are interested in, young journalists out there that might want to follow. And I mean, the stories you've broken have been amazing. Everything that you've done is the accomplishments are amazing, which we'll get into as well. Talk a little bit about the career path.
Yep. So I came from a broadcast media family. My dad is a financial journalist. We moved here from the United Kingdom when I was 9 years old. My dad was with the BBC at the time, and we were supposed to be over here for 1 year. It was a 1 year posting, and it turned into 23. So I've been in the New Jersey, New York area for the last 23 years.
Okay.
And went to school at James Madison University in Virginia. Wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to go into broadcast, go into journalism. I kind of knew it was an option for me just because it was something I'd grown up around, something I was comfortable with. But at the time, I really thought I wanted to do PR. And so I went for a communications degree, under that umbrella, writing, technical communication. And then I actually took an internship at Al Jazeera America, which was the American faction of Al Jazeera. They set that up in New York City. I think it was in operation for about 4 years, 2013 to 2013, 14, 15.
So
Maybe
they have a
years.
Broadcast. Al Jazeera is Middle East. Where they mainly based out of? Saudi or?
So they've gotten. So they have they were established in the Middle East.
My parents watch it. That's why I don't even know where it's from.
Okay, I'd say I think it is Saudi.
It's, okay, but they have a broadcast station in New York.
They have so now they have Al Jazeera English, which is so they have Al Jazeera Main, which is over in the Middle East. Then they have Al Jazeera English in Washington D.C. And then they tried Al Jazeera America as a spin-off of that in New York City.
Okay.
So around 2013, to 2016. They tried to make it a thing. It obviously ended after a couple of years. Couldn't get advertisers. I wonder why.
Yeah.
But I took on a production assistant role there. So I came in and I learned how to put match video up to what the presenters were saying. I ran scripts to the anchors, and kind of was my first time back in a studio since I was little when I would go with my dad. And I just kind of fell in love with it all over again. I loved the studio space. I loved the atmosphere. And so that was actually my final year at JMU. I was doing that as a weekend job. And I would drive from New York City to Virginia every week to do that weekend job. Just because I felt lucky because I'd found something that I really liked. And I wasn't crazy about my college education in the sense where like I didn't come away from it thinking like that was incredible. I couldn't have done, like I'm thinking back now, and this is probably a lesson for like any younger people that listen to your podcast. You know, I think I could have done without my college education to get where I am today.
100% agree.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
College is bullshit. It really is. That's just about it's a scam. It's not a scam.
It was such a cultural thing for us, right?
Yeah.
To go to a 4-year college, to go and, major in something and then come out the other side. But a lot of people these days don't necessarily even go into jobs that they majored in college.
No.
You can save a whole bunch of money if you don't go.
And I know there's people like screaming, what do you mean it's a scam? Look, I'm all for education.
Yeah.
I'm just a fan of, like, to your point. See, I'm already going off on a tangent.
No, it's cool.
What you major in doesn't matter.
Right.
I was a religion.
Unless you're a doctor or
it's what
a
you
lawyer.
specialize in later.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
So if you go later for an MBA or specialize for whatever later on.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a religion economics major.
Okay.
And I joke because I pray that I make money is my joke. But like I have a friend who is a great hedge fund manager who's an art history major.
Okay.
So
it doesn't matter, right?
It's like a cultural thing. You have to go to college, this and that. But some of the greatest leaders and business people, whether it's Gates or Zuckerberg, Michael Dell, like they never even went to college or finished or dropped out.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of not a scam. I think it's more of a business where they care more about money than your education. That's my public service announcement.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And from my perspective, I think I probably could have skipped college and been where I am today. I think there's less of a these days, I feel like there's less of a focus with big companies who look at your resume and they say they want to see a 4-year degree. They want to see a bachelor of either arts or sciences, and they want to see a 3.0 to 4.0 GPA. I think there's less of an emphasis on that today. I think maybe 10 years ago when I joined the workforce, it was maybe a little bit more of an emphasis on that. So, I am obviously very glad that I did go to college.
Yes.
I did learn some things.
Same here.
I did have
I'm
a
not
lot
putting
of fun.
it down. I just think networking after college is more important.
Absolutely.
In college and after college, because 90% of people, their jobs they have is from a referral from a friend anyways.
Yep.
So, or you need someone to get you in the door, or that helps.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that
networking is
me.
more important than education, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And that happened to me with Fox. We had a really great family friend who had seen what I'd done with my travels from JMU to work at Al Jazeera on the weekends. And he's like, wow, that's real dedication. And for some reason, I had it in my head that I really wanted to work at Fox. And the reason that was someone at Al Jazeera said, I have a friend who's looking for a PA, like a personal assistant at Fox. I think you'd be great. Like you'd be great over there. So in my head, I was just like, always had that Fox bug. And I'm like, let me apply there after school and see what happens.
All right.
And I actually didn't know that Fox Business was even a thing when I applied. I thought I was applying to the news channel. And they made me a green room production assistant at Fox Business. So what that means, I ran scripts for Maria Bartiromo, Stuart Varney, brought their guests to hair and makeup. It was a very foot in the door job, but it was it's really one of those entry level jobs where you get to meet a lot of very cool people. I remember my first week on the job, I met Gene Simmons. I met Newt Gingrich. There were some really cool people that were
I've met
that were
some
coming
cool
through.
people in the green room where I'm going in for like a 5-minute hit, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then,
And most of them are very willing to have a chat with you, take a picture with you. I think I have a picture of me and Gene Simmons and his tongue is out in the signature fashion.
That sounds about right. Yeah, because I'd go in there and then, I'd have to go in for hair and makeup.
Yep.
And I had more time to talk to them because it was less hair and more makeup. So it was like
go.
I was in there for 5 seconds, like, cover me up. And then I was like back to the green room. And while I was waiting, I got to meet some cool people.
Yeah.
So you were there every day meeting
Yep.
all walks of life and some really, everything, A-listers and everything.
Interesting characters,
Yeah.
yes. And I did that for about 5 months and then went on to become a production assistant for the 5 a.m. morning show on Fox Business, which was called FBN AM. And at the time, it was hosted by Lauren Simonetti and Nicole Pedalides.
Okay.
And had a lot of fun doing that. I did that for about a year and a half. And then they
5
moved
a.m.
me-
What time did you have to be in?
Yeah, I was going to say the
3?
the lead up to that was interesting. 1. So I had to be in at 1
Really?
for a 5 a.m. show. Yeah. So I would sleep. And luckily, it was pretty much.
So I'm coming home from the bars and you're going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So like our bars, like we would go to bars at like 9 in the morning because that was like our dinner time.
That was after work.
But the sleep schedule was something to. You couldn't do it long term. I liked it because it was sort of like right after college for me. So I'm pretty much a night owl anyway.
When you're
I could
young,
deal
you
with
can
it.
do that. Yeah, I couldn't do that now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you did the 5 a.m. show.
Yep.
Was that 5 to 6 before Maria?
It was. So it was the lead-in before Maria. And then we
Okay.
would actually stay on and we would write the headlines for... Cheryl Casoni has done the headline cut-ins for Maria's show for a number of years. So we would stay around and we would write the headline cut-ins for Cheryl. So we were kind of lumped in with the Maria team as well. But we did have our own hour show right before. And then actually they got rid of that show after COVID.
Okay.
So it's actually funny, Joe. All these things I've done. So my family and I have this running joke. Like I'm always the last one to do it, right? So like went to Al Jazeera as a production assistant. Al Jazeera shut down.
Okay.
Went to FBN AM as a production assistant. FBN shut down.
Don't go to the Don't go to the Cartoon Network.
Right.
I love the Cartoon Network. We can't have. Don't shut down my Tom and Jerry. I cut you off.
Never.
And then what was the next one?
So from there, I went to the New York Stock Exchange as a field producer down there. So I was down there for about 18 months. And I just want to go back to like talking about why, my college education was great, but not necessarily what I needed for the job that I was in, because a lot of it was learning on the spot. Trial by fire is something that I have really learned to embrace in my career, because I usually get thrown into situations that are pretty tough. And then I kind of just, sink or swim, right? I have to kind of figure out how to deal with it. My first day on the NYSE, the market dropped 800 points.
Okay.
And the reporter that I was with had about 16 live hits across both Fox Business and Fox News that day. So it was...
So your first days are like a mini crash.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
geez.
But you look at the crashes now and you're like, 800 points, that's like small potatoes.
Back then,
but
percentage-wise, it's a big deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was real interesting. But then, 18 months after that, COVID hit and they brought us all home. But then Fox Business's booth on the floor, we never reopened it. So I was joking, it's just like, I'm like the last of, the last to do things. Luckily, Charlie signed on to his contract for another 2 years. So, I left Charlie and he's still going. So that's a trend that I broke.
You worked as Charlie Gasparino, who's been on this podcast and has
Yes.
been a dear friend of mine and a mentor to me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You were his
Producer. Yep.
for part of the time at Fox Business.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
for my last 4 years at Fox, I was Charlie's producer. I took over
Okay.
from Lydia Moynihan, who went to the New York Post.
Yep.
Charlie is an incredible mentor. He's mentored a lot of young people in this space who have gone on to do really great things. He's got a repertoire of kids who have gone to CNBC, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, branched out to do my own thing.
So maybe Charlie was the positive end of where because he's produced a lot of people have left to become superstars,
Yeah.
yourself included. So maybe that's the good break in there.
Yeah. And so he's, as you know, he's just a wonderful person and really taught me how to be a solid journalist. I think I always thought of myself as a good writer, a solid writer, a good communicator, but it's the journalism, honing down those skills that he has been doing for the last 40 years and doing it very well at a high level.
Yeah.
He taught me and ingrained all those very pertinent lessons that I think a lot of them get forgotten in journalism today. I think there's this sort of new journalism trend and it seems to be a lot more social media focused, a lot more Twitter focused. We can get into that. Twitter has been sort of my platform. I've grown my following on there. It was my platform when I didn't have another one. At Fox, I really did want to be an on-air reporter. Wasn't able to have that opportunity, but I was able to use my Twitter account to post my information. I was writing for foxbusiness.com as well. But it's an interesting change from where like old media where everybody's sitting down at the TV watching ABC, CBS, and NBC, and now everybody has a choice of where they get their media, right? Like you can get your stuff from TikTok, you can get it from Twitter, you can get it from cable if you want, but there's such an emphasis on new media, and I think especially with Twitter being the first, right? You always want to get be the first because the first usually gets the reposts, and then the followers come, and it's kind of like the algorithm, right? If you're first, it picks you up. So, but you want to be right, and there is unfortunately, especially in the crypto space, there's a lot of it's a bit hypey. People will post stuff for engagement only, whether it's true or not. And I pride myself on breaking through that noise, and because Charlie taught me how to do that. Put in the work, make connections with your sources, and my sources are everything to me. They are literally the reason why I am where I am today. And just those small things that like you might not think are that big of a deal, but they really are when it comes to an average journalist and a really good journalist. And Charlie taught me how to be the latter.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He's the reason I got on TV.
Tell me that story.
Yeah, that was an interesting story. So speaking of networking, one of my great friends, Brent Fitz, who's co-hosted a lot of these podcasts with me, he's a drummer for Slash, Gene Simmons, Aerosmith people and everything. So it's in New York. He was worked with Slash opening up for Aerosmith. And it was actually in Jersey at the Meadowlands in the
right by my house.
Yeah. So Charlie, I got to meet in New York, and he knows everybody in politics and business, but he was like a little kid. He's like, I want to go see Aerosmith. So, and he doesn't know too many people in music. So long story short is he went backstage and got to meet everybody after the Slash opened up. And then when we came back out for Aerosmith, Trump and Melania walk in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is like before Trump ran the first time. And he walks in and he's like, hey, Charlie, how are you? And I'm like, what is going on here? And he's like, I've known Donald 20 years or whatever. So again, he knows everybody in business and everyone in New York. And it was such a great show. He went to buy me dinner afterwards. And then we were talking. I was a little bit drunk. And he's like, you're making so many great points. I want to get you on air tomorrow. And I said, are you serious? And he was like, you're making great points. You just have to take out all the F-bombs. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you can't swear like this on the air. Right. And I was like, all right, fine. And I thought he was just being genuine, like, you took me to a cool thing, let's talk tomorrow type of things. And the next day, hey, this is Liz Clayman's producer. Charlie Gasparino wants to get you on today. We're going to send a car. And I'm looking around like for Ashton Kutcher, like I'm getting punked. And so it's because of the whole, speaking of networking, a good friend of mine who I'm very blessed is a great musician, and Charlie likes the music, got to meet people at a great time, and got me on air the next day.
So what did you talk about on air? I know Liz's team very well just because Charlie is a regular on that show. So.
Yeah. I don't remember. It was
what, 2014 you said?
Yeah, I don't remember what I had for dinner last night. So how am I gonna remember 11 years ago? But I was nervous. I was very nervous. Yeah. And he just said, pretend like we're talking. And I'm like, oh yeah, ignore the 3 cameras that are the size of refrigerators and it's freezing in the studio because they have to, and the Monday Night Football cameras like spinning around, and just focus and forget all this stuff.
Yeah. And just forget about the couple 100,000 people.
And that it's live.
Behind the cameras that are watching. Yeah.
And that it's live.
Yeah.
Like if I do content, I'm sure you're the same way. If you're recording content and you screw it up, I can start it over.
Yeah.
If you're doing it in your home studio or whatever. But when you're live, I couldn't use any F-bombs. Yeah. So I had to.
You had to improv a little bit.
So I don't remember what we talked about, but it was really good. And it got me to get on Cavuto. And I've done some CNBC, Yahoo Finance and stuff because I'm not like a contributor for one or the other. But it was sort of my first time doing actual, and it's because of Charlie. Yeah. So and
he opened a lot of doors for people, and he's just, he doesn't ask for anything in return. Do you know what I mean? He's not one of these transactional people who are like, I'll do this for you and then expect something in return. I think he just genuinely likes helping people out and opening doors and introducing people. Like you said, he's got a lot of good connections, both Wall Street and Washington, and he's been there, done that. And I think a lot of, my dad says this all the time because my dad's been in the industry a long time. He said, you're never going to find another mentor like Charlie. Like they just don't make them like that anymore because people today are so, especially in this business, they're so protective of their sources, of their jobs, right? Let's be real. It's not a dying industry, but it's a shrinking industry. And, Charlie is so sure of himself and he's built his name and he's so respected that like in the early days when I first started working with him, he would give me some of his contacts and say, hey, make these calls, tell them that you're working for me now and make some connections. I don't think a lot of people would do that because I think there's an underlying thought that like, okay.
Of maybe keeping them to yourself.
Yes, because like you don't want the mentee outperforming the mentor, right? And not that I could ever do that with Charlie, but like I think sometimes there's a fear that like if I were to share my sources with someone who is, trying to be like me, then maybe they'll become better than me one day or something.
Yeah,
there's a lot of fear
there's-
of that. But Charlie doesn't worry about that.
There's no
because
ego with that.
There's no ego.
And it wasn't just the first time on TV. Subsequently, after that, advising, mentoring, and again, we can make this the Charlie Gasparino hour.
Yeah, I
but
was going to say, he's going to love all this.
he's gonna love all this. So,
We'll
but
put it on X for him.
we're very grateful for his mentorship.
We are.
So jumping into crypto. So crypto in America. Tell us a little bit about your new sort of
My venture.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll start with the reason I got into crypto, and that was, at the risk of saying Charlie's name again, it's because we were approached back in the end of 2021 by the XRP community. And it's actually funny, you just picked me up from the MGM, and that's where the XRP conference is happening this year, and this is the third year of it. And it's put on by the investors of XRP, which is the native token of the XRP ledger, which is used by the company Ripple.
Yes.
And back in 2020, the Securities and Exchange Commission at that time under Jay Clayton sued Ripple because they thought they were issuing unregistered securities, aka XRP, because nobody really knew. I mean, especially back then, we're trying to hash out what is a security, what is a commodity when it comes to digital assets, right? That's a question that Congress is trying to answer through legislation, that the regulators are trying to help Congress figure out with legislation. But rewind to 2021, there was absolutely no framework at all. I mean, there was a speech made in 2018 that basically deemed Bitcoin a commodity and Ethereum a commodity. They're the number one and the number two cryptocurrencies. XRP at the time was, I believe it was number two. And then when Ethereum got its clarity as a non-security, XRP, it became the number three. And then it ended up falling when the SEC brought the lawsuit. So long story short, the XRP community reached out to Charlie because he had done a segment in 2018 on something about the SEC having a meeting with an Ethereum-backed company called Consensus. And Charlie said, I don't remember saying anything about this, but sure, we'll take a look at what you're saying. And the whole thing kind of ended up him and I looking into the SEC, bringing the case against Ripple, and kind of going behind the scenes, talking to the people involved and uncovering this huge gap in regulation for digital assets. There was just nothing, there were no rules of the road. There was nothing that companies could do to kind of come into the SEC and try and figure out if they were doing anything right, if they were doing anything wrong. It was the start of the Gary Gensler era at the SEC, who was quite interesting because he was a pro-crypto guy. He taught blockchain technology at MIT. And so when he was brought in as the SEC chair, everybody in the crypto industry was super excited. They were like, oh, he's going to be great for the industry. We're finally going to have some clarity. And it ended up being the complete opposite of that. So he ended up cracking down on every single. And so Jay Clayton brought the Ripple case, but then when Gary Gensler came in, he took it over, and he ended up suing pretty much every other big player in the space: Coinbase, Kraken, Consensus, Binance. There's a lot of big names that they went after, all in the name of there just being no definition for what a digital asset is.
Yeah, I was going to say, why would they go after Ripple as an unregistered security when none of them at the time were?
When there was really no...
Was it like a personal thing, or there was some, you never know backstories?
You never really know backstories, but the interesting thing is the reason that the XRP army, and so they're call them the army, community, they reached out to Charlie because of his coverage of this Ethereum-backed company called Consensus. And they were convinced that the Ethereum guys did a backroom deal with the SEC to get that non-security classification, and they thought it was personal, and that's why they went after Ripple. And it's still, believe it or not, the Ripple case has yet to be dropped. So in theory, it is the SEC and Ripple have petitioned the court to say, hey, we want to drop this case. There's a new sheriff in town, Paul Atkins at the SEC. We are actively trying to figure out how to legislate and how to regulate crypto through this crypto task force, through Congress. So we're going to roll back these enforcement actions that were brought under Gensler. But the thing with the Ripple case is that it had already been through the district court level. So there was a ruling at the district court level. It was in the appeals phase in the Second Circuit. It is really hard to roll back court cases. It's hard to roll back decisions that really have never been. There's no playbook for this. Is basically what I'm trying to say. You go to the Second Circuit and it's like, okay, we're going to drop our cross appeals, the SEC and Ripple, but now we have to deal with the judge who issued an injunction against Ripple and a $150 million fine against them. So now they're trying to work that back. It's taking a longer time, basically, because it was the first crypto case that was brought, and there were just procedurally a lot more steps. So the XRP community they're still waiting for that case to be over, but they're still holding their conference here in Las Vegas. This is the third year they're doing it. Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, talked on stage today. I hosted 4 panels over there, and I did 2 at Bitcoin, 2 at Litecoin. So it's been a very crypto heavy week for me.
This
is fun, though.
This has been one of the biggest weeks for crypto conferences. So it was Bitcoin 2025, Litecoin 2025, and then XRP
Correct
2025. So it was all in one week.
Mm-hmm.
Some serious people in town.
Big heavy hitters. Yep.
I mean, JD Vance and Trump's kids, and then the Winklevoss twins.
Yep.
That's
who
my
I
goal.
who I met for the first time.
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yeah.
That's
no,
my goal in
great.
life. Is I want to become a Winklevoss triplet. Do you think I can? You think I can make that happen?
I took a picture with them, and I'm short, but when I wear heels, I'm like, I'm probably like 5'6", 5'7" in heels. They towered over me. They're just like, as Trump would say, they're like out of central casting, right?
Yeah. No, there were some serious people. And then,
David Sachs,
yep. Vivek, there was I saw like the lineup was endless.
Yeah, Ross, the guy that Trump pardoned, Ross Ulbricht, the guy that's founder of Silk Road, in a very moving speech. He closed the Bitcoin conference on.
Okay.
My days are so off. Was it Thursday? Yes, he was the final keynote. And
Michael Saylor.
Okay. Yep.
So I didn't mean to interrupt. Give us the Cliff Notes, condensed like just the whole week summary of what your highlights were.
Yeah. So I think the optimism was something that stood out to me, and the energy. Last year was a little bit different, only because it was my first Bitcoin conference last year, and that was in Nashville. They call it Nash Vegas, right? Because very similar vibes.
Yeah.
But that was the year that, obviously, the 2024 election, Trump was on the campaign trail. He had come out in support of crypto in May of that year, and the Bitcoin conference was in July, and they'd managed to secure Trump as the keynote speaker. So that was really cool, because that was kind of like, oh my goodness, like this presidential candidate is coming to town.
He spoke at the last as
one.
A keynote. Okay, I didn't know that. That's cool to know. Okay.
He actually said, famous line there, "I'm going to fire Gary Gensler." Day one, I'm going to fire Gary Gensler. And
I was
in the room when that happened, and just the eruption of just like screams and cheers. He had to say it again. He was like, "I'll say it again. I'm going to fire Gary Gensler." So, and Elon was kind of hanging around. Like, he was supposed to be, there was some mix up where I think he was supposed to come on stage and do a keynote with Trump. But anyway, there was heavy hitters, but Trump was like the keynote last year. So it was a little bit different this year, just in terms of like, last year was cautious optimism, I feel like, because the crypto community felt like they were on the right track with this candidate who had said, "I will champion you if you vote for me." And I think there was some hope there, cautious optimism. All right, we could go one of two ways, right? He's either going to win or he's not. Kamala Harris at that time she had won the nomination. They had put her up as the nominee, and she had not really. We'd never really heard anything from her about her stance on crypto or blockchain. We didn't really know where she stood. So at the time, Trump was winning the crypto issue because he came out and fully embraced it.
Just clarity with his stance on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can look at that now and we can say, okay, well, he's fully thrown himself in, with the family business ventures, and that's a whole different story. But this time last year was cautious optimism. This year was full on optimism, because so much has been accomplished, I would say, since his inauguration day, just in terms of, not even what the White House has done. I think the White House has done a good job of sort of corralling the agencies and Congress. They've mandated that Congress gets 2 bills, the stablecoin bill and the market structure bill, to Trump's desk by August recess, right? So that's like the first week of August. I think the stablecoin bill will get there. From everything that I'm reporting, everything I'm hearing from my sources on the Hill, stablecoin bill will probably make it over the finish line. Market structure is a lot more intensive. It's a lot more complex, just because it literally is sort of like the plumbing. It's trying to figure out who gets jurisdiction over what kinds of classification of digital assets. We've got digital commodities, digital securities. There's going to be all kinds of tokenomics, I guess, right? They need to figure out what is what and who gets jurisdiction over what.
Are these bills more for regulatory bills, or just to kind of add some structure to the whole crypto and digital world?
It's literally the rules of the road for crypto. So it's and the reason they're doing it through Congress as opposed to through rulemaking at the SEC is because they want it codified into law, so that, the next Gary Gensler that comes into office doesn't come around and change all the rules again.
Okay.
They want to codify it.
And pardon my ignorance, but what is there now?
Nothing.
Okay. So it's still the Wild West.
It's still and Gary Gensler made a good point there, that it is the Wild West, but the reason it was the Wild West is because there was nothing for people to go on. Gary Gensler thought that everything except for Bitcoin was a security. And that was his personal opinion. And that's also how he carried out his regulation by enforcement. That was what was driving it. Now we have a completely different view from the top levels of the SEC. We have a guy in there, Paul Atkins, who was not only an investor in crypto at some point, not anymore, now that he's SEC chair, but also an advisor. He's been deep in the space. He understands it. But you could argue that Gensler did too, but for reasons, I'm told it's very political, political. Elizabeth Warren didn't like crypto. Elizabeth Warren did not want to see crypto succeed. So Gary Gensler had to kind of pivot, is what I'm told. He wasn't as anti-crypto behind closed doors as he was in public. I was told that. Actually, Patrick McHenry, former chair of the House Financial Services Committee, came on and told us that on our Crypto in America podcast a couple weeks ago. He was like, he knew what he was doing, but he put on a face for it. Hey, it's Washington, right? It's politics, I guess. But yeah, it's so different this time. There's been a lot of stuff done in the last, couple months, and I think the crypto industry is feeling really optimistic about it and excited for the future because finally they don't feel like they have to go to Europe. They don't have to go to Asia to build these technologies and have these cool projects that are actually solving real world problems. They can do it right here in the US and they're not going to get sued. And there's going to be a way forward for them now. So that was palpable, I think, at not just the Bitcoin conference, but also Litecoin, XRP. It's been a cool week.
Yeah. Any other highlights? You mentioned Ross spoke as closed out the Bitcoin conference. You said it was kind of...
it was emotional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, he was the founder of Silk Road, which was the black market, right? That you could buy drugs. It was sort of like you could go and buy pretty much anything you wanted on there. And this, I forget what year this was. This was like early 2010s, right? I think Ross ended up in jail. He was thrown in jail in 2014. He was given 2 life sentences plus 30 years for being the creator of the Silk Road, basically like creating the technology that allowed this stuff to happen. And all the money that, the trading money, the trading currency on that platform was Bitcoin. So that's kind of where Bitcoin got its,
that's where people say it's drug dealers and it's all negative. Because that was there for basically like what was Silk Road, like an exchange or?
Yes, I believe it was more of like it wasn't an exchange in the sense of like a Coinbase or a Kraken. But it was basically a platform where
to facilitate,
was it
black tar heroin?
Basically,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And now I have to get it elsewhere. I get
pay it in
it's
Bitcoin.
Fine.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right.
But Ross was thrown in jail, 2 life sentences plus 30 years for being basically creating it. Now there's this whole switch at the top. We've seen it from the DOJ. The DOJ put out a letter a couple weeks ago that said, we are not going to target the people who develop these software programs, right? There's a separation between the bad actors who use a software platform and the people who create a software platform. Should we be going after the people who, use neutral technology to set up something that may or may not be used by bad actors? Do we go after them? Do we make them the bad guys like Ross? Or do we go after and focus on the bad actors? And the Trump DOJ has said, we're going to focus less on the software developers and we're going to focus more on the actual criminals that
people who use that platform for criminal activity.
Exactly. But under prior administrations, it was sort of a blanket ban, right? Blanket no.
Because it was new.
Because it was new. It was misunderstood. And yeah, obviously there was not great things going on the platform. But I think the question was that Ross's fault or was that the fault of the people doing the drug dealing and the whatever else was going on there?
I just made the gun. I didn't force you to shoot it.
So
I didn't tell you to shoot it.
Yeah.
But so one of the things I've realized in all of whatever you want to call it, securities or in the stock market, is that the technology is moving way faster than the regulators can keep up with.
Yes.
And that's just in the stock market.
Yes.
Whether it's new ETFs, whether it's social media or whatever. In the crypto world, it seems like it's on steroids. So if the technology is moving 10 times faster, and how do you even keep up with the regulations? And I know you cover a lot of the policy and so forth. I mean, you actually need somebody who is trading it or involved in it to help, because you have to tell them like, hey, this is the way it is, not like some academic view of how things work.
Exactly. And I think the prior administration was very much an academic view. And now you've got people in there who actually understand the technology. And actually,
Like David Sachs, for example.
David Sachs, like David Sachs, like Bo Hines, he's the executive director of the White House Crypto Council. You've got Hester Peirce and Mark Ueda leading, and Paul Atkins obviously leading at the SEC. It's just much more of a, it seems like more of a, everybody's rowing in the same direction is what I keep hearing from, between Congress, the regulators, and the White House. We're all rowing in the same direction, so they're getting results. David Sachs said on stage the other day, this administration is moving at the speed of tech. So, and to his point,
you think that's a good thing?
I think so. I mean, to his point, there was 4 years of nothing, right? There could have been 4 years of the SEC could have taken up rulemaking, right? Coinbase actually petitioned them to come up with some rules of the road and rule make for crypto. They refused. We could have been a lot further along in this industry than we are now, basically just starting out writing these rules. If it happened 4 years ago, you'd be a lot further along than you are right now. The SEC, the Biden administration kind of just, they sat on their laurels and let crypto sort of, they regulated by enforcement. They sued pretty much everybody and just let, it was the Wild West, but it was the Wild West for a reason, because there was nothing that anyone was doing to help. So now you're getting more coordination, help from the top. I think that has been probably, from what I hear, from what people tell me, that's been the most helpful, is like, there's this mandate now from Trump and the White House to the regulators, to Congress, to say, hey, crypto's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. We're going to help these people out. We're going to give them some rules of the road. And that's it.
Yeah. I find with crypto, it's one of two things. It's either, I don't get this. Mm-hmm. I don't understand the use, this and that. Or it's the hardcore people that are super passionate, that are just like, will literally, like, you can make fun of their mother and they wouldn't care. You make fun of their crypto, they're going to get animated.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you find that it's a very, not divisive, but just a very, like, I don't know, there's like two, is it becoming a little bit more mainstream? Or are you finding when you tell someone you're involved in crypto, are you finding a similar type of reaction?
Yeah, there's still an education and a knowledge gap, I think, but that comes with age. I think a lot of older people still don't understand the tech. And I say that talking about my parents, right? My parents are still kind of like, oh, like, how does this crypto thing work? And but then you talk to people who have younger kids right now, and they grow up in essentially the metaverse, right? Like, they're on their computers, they're on their phones. They know what cryptocurrency is. They know what AI is. It's just something that it's like me growing up with a cell phone, right? Compared to my parents, like, they just weren't involved in that tech world. So I think it is a lot. It depends a lot on the generational.
The generation.
So we'll see adoption come just over time. I think it will take some time, but also it's just a knowledge gap, right? You've got to educate these people and make them understand that, like, it's not, it's not this scary thing. It's technology. It's probably the way of the future. Blockchain technology is really interesting. It solves a lot of real world issues. Kind of like the internet. Like, everybody was scared of the internet at first, right? And now we can't live without it.
There's a lot of people who are, I mean, obviously Charlie Munger, when he was around, he was anti and just made fun of it. Then there's other people who love blockchain technology, but just don't love the crypto side.
Yeah.
And then there's everywhere in between. Mm-hmm. And then the main things are use.
Yep.
Because I get the store of value.
Yep.
And I get, for example, you live in Venezuela, you're in Egypt, and you have, let's say, 100,000 in the bank, the equivalent of that, and you're worried about devaluation of the currency. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to wake up, let's say you do have round numbers, 100,000 in the bank. You don't want to wake up the next day with 50,000 because some dictator or someone in the government decided to devalue the currency. So you might say, well, it's risky to put my money in Bitcoin, but it's still the lesser of two evils from waking up to a 50% haircut, possibly. So I get that. The currency part is where, from the people I talk to, are we ever just going to go to the supermarket and use Bitcoin to buy groceries? Mm-hmm. Or not just a $50 or $30 purchase, but maybe a $50,000 car, for example. Do you think it'll get to that point where, and I know some people will say you can already do that, the hardcore people, but do you think the lay people, the regular people, just like they use their credit cards, will be able to use Bitcoin or crypto for purchases?
Yes, I think we'll get there. I think stablecoins are going to be the vehicle of how to get there. Stablecoins they are backed by a stable asset like the US dollar. Usually, I think it is 98% of all stablecoins are backed by US dollars at this point. That's the legislation that's going through Congress right now, the Genius Act, trying to figure out how to pass the Senate. Hopefully next week we'll see some movement on that. But that is sort of, I mean, money is digital anyway, right? You know, we use our credit cards, we tap our phones.
Yeah.
You know, stable coins are just a way of putting that on the blockchain, you know, cutting out the middleman, cutting out the fees that we pay to the credit card companies for the privilege of tapping our cards, right? Stable coins happen on the blockchain. It's just making that more seamless, more cost effective. And you mentioned, you know, remittances, right? Remittances overseas, people who have their currencies devalued, people in Nigeria, people in Brazil. Payment stablecoins are, and Bitcoin too, is a great way of being able to send money across borders quickly without that 3 to 5 business day settlement time, without the hefty fees, you know, $40 fee for me to send money to someone in the UK. Blockchain cuts all of that out. And I think the stablecoin route is where we're going to see the most. That's kind of how adoption, I think, in the payment side of things is really where it's going to take off. Bitcoin started out as a medium of exchange. Happened right after the financial crisis. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he is, whoever she is, whoever they are, we still don't know, created this, you know, very simple, actually, genius that people call it, the white paper, that created this means of peer-to-peer exchange that cut out the government, cut out the banks. And today it's used more as a store of value. I think people see it as more of like a, you know, you put your money in it to hedge against inflation, hedge against economic instability. Less and less is like, I'm going to use my Bitcoin to buy pizza. That's more of like a layer 2 thing. But I think stable coins is really going to be where we see the blockchain payments adoption. So keep an eye on that.
Okay. Yeah, I know it was started around the financial crisis as a sort of an FU to the government, because I also get, besides the store value in the currency, is, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine plays poker overseas, and he goes to Europe and he plays in a big cash game. And he says, if I'm coming back to the U.S. with 50 or 100,000, why does the government have to be up my, you know what? Like, why does I don't know. I swear all the time on this podcast. I don't know why I'm hesitating. I'm trying to be a gentleman, I guess.
No, you're
But
good.
he's like, why are they up my ass? He's like, if I want to come in with 100,000, I have to declare this and that, I can just throw it on my Bitcoin wallet and no one has to know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Not because you're doing anything shady. You're just like, I just don't like, why do I need scrutiny?
Yeah.
Why do I need scrutiny if I send something over a certain amount on Venmo or PayPal? Like, why does the government need to claim? Like, that's where a lot of this, I guess the passion, not necessarily anger, but the passion comes from, is like, just leave us alone.
Yeah.
You know, I get there's people doing illegal things. There's also people doing illegal things with dollars too. So my point is, if
banks,
you're
money laundering,
yeah. So if you're just like, hey, I'm going to whatever, or I inherited some money overseas and I want to bring it back in the U.S., like, why does everything have to be, you know, scrutinized by the government? So.
And it is interesting, that dichotomy of how Bitcoin was started, because they wanted no government interference, right? They didn't want anything touching that. And now government's all over it.
Well, that's the thing. If it was started as a big FU to the government, the government could have shut it down at any point.
Right.
That was why this new administration being more crypto friendly is a huge win. And that's why everyone's screaming at these conferences. But yeah, that's
it's a double-edged sword, because you won't get adoption if you don't get regulation. There has to be some kind of regulation for it to go mainstream, right? It can be a peer-to-peer payment system, but for it to be adopted by the banks, for it to be adopted by the government, there needs to be regulation. So it's kind of like you need the government intervention to get the adoption. So
yes,
it's kind of the necessary or the lesser of two evils, I guess.
Yeah, but even before the administration, all of the ETFs that rolled out was a huge vote of confidence, credibility, whatever you want to call it, where if it's BlackRock, Fidelity, ARK, whatever, there's like 5, 10, you know, obviously, but like there's a lot of not just Bitcoin now, Ethereum ETFs and 2X ETFs and all this stuff.
There's a lot of single asset ETF applications in for XRP, for Doge, for Solana.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how the SEC is going to, whether they're going to approve or deny those. We should know at least on a few of them by the end of this year. But I think when the big watershed moment really was when Larry Fink and BlackRock applied for that Bitcoin spot ETF, because that was sort of the vote of confidence, right? When Wall Street sees Larry Fink saying, "Oh, this is the future. This is great. We're going all in on this.
We're the largest asset holder, and we're backing it."
Exactly. $12 trillion in assets under management or something. And yeah, that was really the oh, okay, this crypto thing is not just a niche investment anymore, not just a niche industry. It's actually becoming more mainstream. And then Washington got involved a year later, and now it is where we are today.
Slowly, but I like what David Sachs said, that line about it's like tech now. It's moving like tech.
Yeah.
Because it was like 10, 12 years of just no progress,
Nothing.
whatever. Okay, let's get moving. Let's regulate this. Let's, make this a little bit more. It's been around for a long time. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because if everyone's like, oh, it's going to zero and this and that, which anything is possible. But if it's been around this long, I mean, some people are talking about 500,000 on Bitcoin and obviously many other coins. I have like 900 questions right now. I'm trying to narrow it down. What are your thoughts on all of the meme coins, or you mentioned Trump coin with his family, shit coins, whatever you want to call them? What are your thoughts on all that?
So the SEC issued guidance on meme coins a couple of months
They're not
ago.
mean. They're meme.
They're
They're mean when they go down. I know.
Yes.
For people who don't know, you've been here a week in Vegas and you've moderated how many panels and had to be focused on. So again, I can't thank you enough for being here.
No, I'm having fun. So. Just if I say something ridiculous, just because of lack of sleep. But no, meme coins. So the SEC put out guidance recently that basically said meme coins are not securities. They're not under our jurisdiction. They're basically like collectibles. Like you kind of go do your thing. If you want to put a bunch of money in meme coins, you go right ahead. If you get screwed, basically, then don't come crying to the SEC. It's not our jurisdiction. They're not securities. So they kind of just said, yep, there's this segment. If you want to go and indulge in meme coins, you do that. I think it's just going to always be this segment of the market that's there. Hundreds, if not thousands of meme coins get created every single week. I was talking to your producer before we went on air, and he's like, oh, well, then that's, the value of crypto can't be that great then if you can just keep printing coins and printing money, and just making these coins out of thin air. That's very meme coin culture, right? And the Trump coin, you mentioned that. I think there's been a divide in the crypto community over the president and his family's involvement in the space, because on the one hand, he is the crypto president, right? He embraced crypto. And it's funny, a couple of years ago, he did say, Bitcoin is a scam, or I don't want it. I think it's a threat to the dollar. And then, now he's embracing it with both arms. But, you either have that or you have the administration prior who did absolutely nothing and actively tried to shut down the space. So I think there's a divide. People aren't crazy about the family involvement because obviously it's also affecting the legislation in Congress. This gives Democrats a lot more ammo to say, why are we legitimizing this when President Trump, Elon Musk can potentially profit off launching their own stablecoin? That has been a big point of contention for the stablecoin bill specifically. If big tech can offer their own stablecoins, like why are we making this easier for them to do that? But then on the other hand, it's a free market capitalism, right? You can love what the president's doing or you can hate it, but the fact is that there is more clarity now than there was in the last 4 years, and a lot more opportunity to build for builders, and just kind of the reality of what. And this is what Charlie would say. He's like, if you know Donald, and he has known him for a long time, like he makes himself the story, right? He wants to be in the center of the story. So, is that what he's doing here? Maybe. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't really care because they're like, okay, well, at least this is better than the alternative. So, it's a very split.
And you use the word divisive split. I also think people's opinions are how we feel politically too.
Yeah,
because if you like someone politically, for the most part, you're going to agree with a lot of stuff. If you don't like him, it doesn't matter what he or she does.
Yeah.
It's just so it also depends on which side that you lean towards. As a stock trader, I always underestimate when I talk about stocks because it's second nature to me.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's like, I want to buy some stocks, and they come to me and they're very intimidated because, and I just, again, take it for granted, which I shouldn't, but they're like, how do I buy, like if I want to buy 10 shares of Apple or whatever, or like, how do I do it? Mm-hmm. And I underestimate because I've been doing this for a long time. I'm 108, by the way, in case you didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing
You
this.
look it.
Yeah, exactly. I look good for 108. So I underestimate and I tell them, okay, there's brokerages and a lot of them are pretty much the same. And you open an account and you fund it. And I'm not patronizing. I just underestimate how intimidating that is. And that's just for stocks.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm leading with this is if someone's watching this, and I know there's a lot of people really intimidated to say, okay, I'm kind of into this. I want to speculate, or I want to get a little bit of, even some big asset allocators are saying they're allocating some of their, not just to gold or bonds or to fixed income, but to Bitcoin. How do you, like, it's not advice, it's by no means advice, but like, where does someone get started if they're like, I want to put $1,000 into Bitcoin?
I would say, and obviously this is not financial
No,
advice,
of course
but
it's not.
From everything that I hear, from my reporting and from people in this position, ETFs are a good way to start, just because they are, backed up by big names like BlackRock and Fidelity, and it gives you exposure to Bitcoin without having to buy the underlying asset. So maybe someone who's not comfortable opening up a wallet on Coinbase or on Kraken, they can go to their favorite ETF provider and say, hey, or to their financial advisor and say, hey, I want a little bit of exposure to the IBIT, BlackRock.
That's the main one, is the IBIT.
IBIT is the main one.
Because I follow a lot of options flows and where the big institutions flow in unusual options and so forth, and all of the flows, good or bad, is in IBIT is the main one. That's the BlackRock ETF.
And
so
it's grown. I think it's the fastest growing ETF ever.
it trades like 50 million shares a day.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep.
So is it going to be, I should know the answer to this. It's not a 1-for-1 though with Bitcoin. Or is it like, in other words, if Bitcoin moves up 10%, is IBIT going to move up 10%? Is it close, or is it like a tracking? Because I should know this.
I should know this too.
I know. Because I know some ETFs don't exactly track the current, like gold, the GLD ETF. I don't know if it exactly, I should know that too.
Yeah.
108 years in the
There's
business.
There's something called NAV, right? Like
the net asset value. Yeah. So I just don't know, but I know it's close enough. So that's one way to get involved in Bitcoin, where you're going to get roughly the percentage up and down, or the movements, without worrying about a wallet, worrying about losing your password, worrying about storage, worrying about, I have 10 shots at this or else I'm going to lose my money, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's like a more conservative or safer way to get involved.
A more conservative, safer way. You could go with a centralized exchange like a Coinbase or a Kraken, or you could have your own wallet, like an Exodus wallet or a Phantom wallet, where it's a decentralized exchange. You go on a DEX instead of a CEX, which mitigates the risk of, a centralized exchange. They're great and everything, but FTX was a centralized exchange, and look what happened to FTX.
Yeah.
There are risks when it comes to one entity having control of your funds, right? And I think that's going to be a big part of this market structure bill too, is trying to, or there's stipulations in there where it's like we need to separate customer funds from the entity, right? So in case of a disaster, then the customer funds are not caught up in the larger issues of the company. So decentralized exchanges and having your own wallet is a preferred method, at least for the crypto evangelists, right? Because they feel like that's just the best way. It's control of your own money. You're not giving it to a bank. You're not giving it to a centralized exchange. You're not giving it to an ETF provider. It's literally all there for you. But some people who are not comfortable with tech might not see that as, it might be a bit more complicated than it needs to be. So there are definitely options. Kind of depends on your level of comfortability.
Yeah. Do you invest, or do you have any involvement?
I don't own a single cent in Bitcoin or anything
I'm sure
else.
people are thinking that, so they probably want to know.
I'm pretty open about it. I get this question quite a lot, actually. I just like to separate church and state, honestly. Charlie says, cover this stuff like baseball, and that's what I do. I would feel a lot less comfortable if I, had to wake up in the morning and a story that I broke, I had to worry about it affecting someone's portfolio or affecting my portfolio. I never want to have to be checking my phone all the time, being like, oh no,
because
Bitcoin's
I know it's
down
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I like to just keep a safe distance. I like to cover it, not invest in it.
Some financial networks do not allow the employees to own anything besides just regular ETFs and index mutual funds, stuff like that, because there could be a conflict of interest if you're reporting on something and you're moving the markets. Meanwhile, Congress, who
well, there you go.
affects all of these laws.
I know.
I mean, it's just so hypocritical. That's another podcast right there.
That's another podcast.
But they're allowed to trade on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And it's
I think there's arguments there too, like, oh well, people who own houses are allowed to report on the housing market.
No, that's dumb. That's not even an analogy.
So there's, there are, and I think in in the agencies too, right? There's strict ethical rules around regulators being able to own this stuff. So like Paul Atkins, for example, had to divest all of his crypto holdings before becoming the SEC chair.
David Sachs sold a lot of stuff.
David
I think,
Sachs sold
before.
a lot. Yeah. But I think there's some question around like how far do we go with that? You know, like do we make them sell absolutely everything, or is there like ways around where we could kind of, you know, I guess there's such things as blind trust.
Blind trust, yeah. Hank Paulson, before he became Treasury Secretary, was CEO of Goldman Sachs and sold all of his Goldman Sachs because that was, I don't know if it's the rule or if it's just implied, but I think it's, okay, if you're in the government, you have to sell any public holdings, or again, you should be in a blind trust. He actually lucked out because he sold it near the top before the financial crisis. Right. Maybe it could work to your advantage as well. But yeah, I think as long as it's, you know, disclosed, and there should be a little bit more clarity with those rules as well, because that's in the stock trading community. It's almost laughable at this point. Like I think there's a Pelosi ETF that just that just tracks, and then she mentioned she's buying something, and the thing goes through the roof. It's kind of like
it's a running joke.
It's laughable at this point. You know, like I even joke when you talk about David Tepper, Paul Tudor Jones, Druckenmiller, Pelosi. When I talk about the greats, I throw her in there. And when people laugh, I'm like, how do you turn $180,000 salary into $300 million? You got to be doing something right.
Yeah, something right.
Better than my returns. I'm like, you're doing something great. So it's kind of a laughing, ongoing joke. But in all seriousness, I don't know if that's ever going to be resolved. Especially if Congress is they're the people who are going to vote on their own. Right. You have to vote that you can't trade on a law that's going to pass soon. Like it's kind of like, I don't want to mess with my wallet either.
Yep.
It's just, anyways, that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
In the few minutes we have left, the personal side of Eleanor for people who are hopefully becoming big fans of this. I'm a big fan. Can I embarrass you with a funny? I put in AI.
Sure.
And there's a question about balancing personal and professional life. Being a cat rescuer and a fan of country music and musical theater adds a unique dimension to your persona.
I love that. You really did your homework, Joe. Nice.
I try to prep, yes. So tell us a little about your personal side when you're not doing an amazing job reporting and breaking news and extensively covering conferences and moderating panels and all the amazing things you do.
I'll have to say, I think the biggest thing I'm excited about getting home after this month-long world tour I've been on is getting to see my cats.
Okay.
Because I do have 4, and while that sounds crazy to some people, I'm just very involved in cat rescue. And the reason I even got involved in cats in the first place was, you know, I got my first cat in 2021 as a kitten, tiny little 5-week-old ginger fluff ball. His name is Simba. And since you said we can get personal on this podcast, I'm going to get personal. I'm going to give you a little insight.
Why not? You're already lighting up. I love it.
Right. Okay. So the reason I got into cat rescue is because I got Simba with my ex at the time.
Okay.
And when I moved out, we were basically battling for custody of Simba.
Okay.
And so, you know, my ex would have him for a month. I would have him for a month.
Oh, you really did have custody?
Yeah. So we shared him.
Custody. Okay.
I ended up winning in the end, but for those months where I didn't have him, I really missed him. And so my parents were like, well, why don't you go volunteer at a shelter? And I was like, that's a great idea. I will. And so got involved in volunteering. And then I had made some friends who actually had rescues of their own. And they asked me to foster and did some rescue around like my community too. The reason I have my black cat Bonnie is because I'm part of a Facebook rescue group. And someone sent out a Facebook alert saying, you know, I'm not going to say where I live publicly, but I live in a town in Jersey where this cat had been seen. She's like, oh, her and her brother were dumped in a box in this town.
Yeah.
Happened to be right next to my town. And so my friend went and trapped them, brought them to me. He was like, can you just watch them for a night or two? He's like, maybe the shelter can take them in. And the shelter didn't have any room at that time. So I had them in my house with me and, you know, kind of socialize them. They were pretty social already, but a big thing about rescue and fostering is to socialize these animals who these cats, these dogs who are born outside and have sort of a feral life, in order to make them more adoptable in the future. But it just ended up that I ended up keeping Bonnie because she was just the biggest sweetheart and she loved Simba. Did another foster for my friend. This is my third cat, Cass, who ended up staying because he's not adoptable. That's the thing. He's very not a lap cat. So if he went to a shelter, he would probably be sitting in a shelter for more than a year. And so he loves my cats. And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to make his life harder. He's going to stay with me. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then my fourth one is Arthur. He's a bit of more of a long-term foster. His mom is in college and she can't take care of him right now. So I've actually had him for over a year. So I kind of think of him as my cat. My parents watch them while I'm away and they love all of them. So, but the cool thing is that they all get along. None of them are from the same litter, but they've all become friends. And I'm told that's very rare.
That is rare.
Yeah.
I love animals. And I used to volunteer when I lived in Boston a long time ago, or after college, at the MSPCA.
Oh.
And I just couldn't do it. I mean, this is now the personal side of me, because when they'd bring in dogs off the street, they would temper test them. And I never knew any of this stuff. So they'd put a bowl of food with the rubber hand and take it away to see how the dog reacts.
If they were aggressive or not.
And some of them would just look up at you and they would be okay. And some would bite the rubber hand. Yeah. And then that would decide if they're adoptable. And I'm like, that's the shittiest test ever. Because if I'm hungry and you put a bowl of food in front of me and you take it away, I'm biting your hand too. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to get hangry, as they say. So I was there and I'm the same way. I'm like, I just wanted to adopt. Like you'd see them if they were in the shelter for like longer than normal, like you just want to adopt all of them. So I couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, I can't do this. And I was just volunteering. So
that becomes the danger. It does. You just have to be.
Sounds like you end up adopting all of them.
You got to discipline yourself a little bit. And it's funny because when I had Bonnie and her brother with me, my mom was like, "Ellie, you can't have 3 cats in your apartment. Like you just can't. Like you're only allowed to have one." And she's pretty much given up at this point because I now have 4. So she won't even reprimand me anymore.
But that's rare. They all get along.
They all get along.
That's cool.
So cats, yes, but also I do love musical theater. I grew up as a musical theater lover. My parents brought me to the theater when I was young. So grew up having a love for it. Everything from Stephen Sondheim to Andrew Lloyd Webber to the oldies. I love My Fair Lady, South Pacific. So I was actually always involved in my high school musicals. So middle school, high school, I was a dancer, I was a singer, and I've always kind of carried that love with me. And the reason I love country music on the other side of the aisle is because I went to school in Virginia. And actually, it's crazy. My New York roommate, she's from Long Island. She introduced me to country music my freshman year of college. So It's not because I went to school in the South for a Jersey girl anyway.
Yeah.
It was because my roommate from Long Island got me into it. So I went to see Kenny Chesney here at the Sphere a couple days ago. He was wonderful.
How was that?
Incredible. It's just
the graphics and the everything in the Sphere is like mind blowing.
It's an immersive experience, and it's cool because the artist gets to kind of tell the story visually. So like everything that they were experiencing when they were songwriting, they kind of get to put up their own graphics and have it be like their own experience. So it's them telling you a story. They're already telling you the story with the song, but the visuals just make it like the coolest thing ever.
Even I've only seen U2 at the Sphere, but even if you don't like whether it's the Eagles or Kenny Chesney or who else is with Dead and Company, there's been I might go see Backstreet Boys in the fall.
Oh,
so.
Do it. That'll be
come out for that. You can join us.
There.
But even if you don't like the music, everything I know from anyone who's gone to the Sphere, they're like, I'm not really a fan of whatever band, but I just sat there and stared at the visuals because that was like mind blowing. So I'm sure Kenny Chesney, because they have to tape in a certain or record in a certain what's the word
format.
Yeah, format and definition or whatever it is, 8K, 16K. I don't even know what I'm talking out of my ass right now.
I was saying to my friend that I was with, I'm like, this is a whole business if you think about it, because you've got the team who has to go out and shoot all of this footage specifically for this concert.
For that format. Right.
Yeah. It's like a whole another way of seeing entertainment. So, and actually my parents went to see the ABBA immersive experience in London, where they actually project them. So it's like ABBA, but how they used to be. It's all AI, and it's like they're actually on stage. They said it was the coolest thing ever. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the next thing. It'll be like the Beatles come back. Yeah. And it'll be at the Sphere, and it'll be an immersive experience. Like I feel like with AI, we're at that section of just like incredible experiences they're about to.
Well, they already do that.
But they already do that.
People,
yeah.
Like the music was a Drake song by AI, and he was like, "This is better than what I'm singing," or whatever. People didn't know the difference or whatever. They were like, they thought it was really him.
It's scary but cool at the same time.
Yeah. Last question. Advice for aspiring journalists, or even if it's whether advice for anyone who wants to get into journalism or reporting, or even something you might have want to tell yourself 5-10 years ago.
Just stay honest. I think being accountable in this industry is very underrated. I always am willing to admit when I'm wrong. So, it comes with the territory, unfortunately with journalism, sometimes we mess up. But I think the key is to always remain honest. And I've actually had a lot of people come up to me and say, you really are, you have integrity. You're not just, and I did come from big media. And I think there's a perception of people who, aren't in the industry to kind of view big media as this like talking down to you kind of thing. Like, and that's the cool thing about digital media, right? Social media is like you're interacting with your audience. When you come from big media, it's like the talking heads are talking at you. And I think a lot of the time there's this perception that like, they report basically what they see and sort of their opinion, what they see fit. And then if it's wrong, there's not a lot of accountability to say, because, who do we have to apologize to kind of thing. And I honestly feel like it served me really well to say, once in a while, if I get it wrong, I did. And, it's no harm meant by it, but just being honest and being open and being kind to people. I'm always attainable. I pride myself on that. I've a lot of fans. I don't know, a lot of people who know my work.
You have a very impressive following.
Thank you. I have a lot of people at the XRP conference and the Bitcoin conference too, who came up to me and said, really appreciate your work. I love what you've been doing. And, I make myself available to those people. I never want to be that egotistical person who's like high and mighty. You know what I mean? I'm always available. I'm always friendly. If you have something nice to say to me, I'll always have time for you. So just be humble, be accountable, and work hard. I mean, gosh, hard work. Half of this game is, I'd say a quarter of this game is luck, but 75% of it is the hard work. And you put in the hours and you have a vision and you work for it, and it does pay off.
Yeah, so, and it's amazing how that luck gets graced where he blesses us when we do work hard.
100%.
It's that whole like luck and opportunity, that whole quote.
Yeah, don't cut corners. It's. I think it's easy to do in this day and age, but it'll pay off tenfold if you don't.
Awesome. Thank you again for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being awesome. Thank you for being an inspiration. And I actually had an entire second page of questions here.
So we're just going to have to come back then, aren't I?
So we'll have to do this another time. But thank you so much for doing this, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Sounds great, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.